Welcome everyone. Welcome to our second session of the Spotlight series that will consisting of 7 sessions that will take place every weekday at 9 a.m. during this big brainstorm. And we're so delighted to have you join us today, and we'll be spending time together from now to 10 past 10 a.m. Eastern time. I hope you're happy, and we're happy to have you join us. My name is Alice Mukashaka. I am the Next Generation Fellow for the Transforming Education at the UN Foundation, accompanied today by a stellar panel of speakers, as well as many change makers and young innovators who were with us last week at the big brainstorm kickoff, and they were over 250 of us, really, people, young people and older people who joined us to explore, prototype, and launch initiatives to tackle some of the humanity's greatest challenges. We also launched, if you remember, for those who were here, that we launched 24 innovators who will be leading their teams in brainstorming around solutions to some of the greatest challenges. For those of you who joined us for the first time, and as a reminder, of course, to those who have been with us before, this event is part of the 2 design sprint of the big brainstorm. And at the UN Foundation, we really committed to supporting young change makers in shaping the global agenda to tackle the world's most urgent challenges. Our Future Agenda program is designed to deliver impact to the next generation, young people under 30 who make up half of the population, and then the future generation that comprise of 10.9 billion of people yet to be born in this century. And these spotlight sessions are the one way to support us through leading thinkers, entrepreneurs, and policymakers sharing, engaging with us in the conversation. After the grand ambition to change trajectories in the second half of the SDG era, today we'll be discussing, as you already know throughout the posters, that we'll be discussing about equipping young people with the skills to thrive, as you've already seen on the posters, with a fireside chat including Soledad, Patiño, the Global Skills Academy Coordinator at UNESCO. We also have Maryjacob, Okwuosa, the young leader at Global Partnership for Education. This will be followed by our second fireside chat between Jaïri from the Global Future of Work Manager at Unilever, and then Cecilia Soriano, who's the Regional Policy and Advocacy Coordinator at Asia South Pacific Association for Basic and Adult Education, and Amy Parker, who is the Senior Learning Through Play Advisor at Save the Children. Then, of course, we move to the Q&A. So we please encourage you to engage in the chat through this session, particularly to you innovators and change maker who joined us today. Remember, this session is for us, really. It was designed to help us as we innovate and co-create in these 2 weeks. So use this space to build your ideas, build on different perspective and ideas that will be shared here to expand your horizon. So with a bit of framing, before we jump into the fireside, I would like to dive deeper into the sessions of today. As we all remember, the theme of the 2023 big ideas we said over the last week is a year of action for the SDGs in preparation to the upcoming second Sustainable Development Goals Summit scheduled in September, an opportunity for the world to accelerate actions to solve our current and future challenges. But after the large disruption of education in history, many are questioning fundamental standards and inequity of the global education system. So in many places of the world, lack of digital access to formalistic teaching and outdated curriculum does not prepare young students adequately for the future. Still, many young people leave school without having the basic knowledge of reading, writing, and even mathematics. So how can we how can education system to create a more inclusive, creative and future-ready approach to learning? So how do we scale up access to digital skills and literacy to ensure no one is left behind? And how do we take this approach to enhance the power of informal learning through play? So it's so important really to have this in mind as we start this fireside chat, and yeah, keep in mind all these questions as we have a conversation really. Now, I know that I've took much of the time giving the background and everything, but now it's my pleasure to announce our first fireside chat, and we're going to start with our two estimated guests, Soledad Patiño, the Global Skills Academy Coordinator at UNESCO, and Maryjacob, who is the young leader at the Global Partnership for Education. So we are thrilled to have you with us today to share your unique insights and perspective on the topic. And I'm excited really kicking off this conversation to hear from both of you on how you see your work contributing to the broader conversation of education. So yeah, and let's really get started, and starting with you, Soledad, with the work you currently doing. Why do you think education is so crucial in promoting sustainability and resilience, and how can education empower individuals and communities to become more sustainable and resilient in the face of the global challenges such as climate change, social inequity, and even economic instability? Please, yeah, welcome, and take it forward.
Thank you very much, Alice, and good morning to all. Good afternoon, as we are from different sides of the world. Thank you very much. We are very pleased to join this session from UNESCO. So to start with the overall question, why is education so important for sustainability and resilience? I think that education, as we all know, is a basic human right and a global public good with the power to transform individual lives, communities, and the planet for better over generations. It is everyone's right, fundamental throughout life and a force for transformation from early childhood and all the way to secondary and even adult education. Schooling and skills development is fundamental for every single individual to ensure that he or she can thrive in society, the economy, and their own personal life. In response to this, UNESCO's education sector provide global and regional leadership to ensure every child, youth, and adults has access to quality education throughout life, while keeping a big priority focus for Africa and gender equality since its founding in 1945, as you know, in the aftermath of the World War II. At UNESCO, we also recognize the importance of a lifelong learning trajectory that helps children from a young age to build that resilience and that self-awareness that they will need to reach their potential in life and contribute to society in a sustainable manner. UNESCO has also the power to catalyze transformation in education by bringing together stakeholders from around the world and from different sectors. As you know, the 2030 Sustainable Agenda, and in particular the targets set by the Sustainable Development Goal 4, which focuses on education and aims to ensure inclusive and equitable quality education to promote lifelong learning opportunities for all, is key for us. In short, education is and should continue to be a priority among youth, governments, and private sector for sustainable development, and it's the best possible investment that we can make. Over to you. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Soledad. That was so powerful. It was so crucial to hear that you were fostering the lifelong learning. And I saw some of the innovators that presented last week. Some of the innovations they have included self and lifelong learning for young people. So that's really powerful to see that UNESCO is really championing that. And so great, so glad that you could share that with us. Now, moving to you, Maryjacob. let me, turn the discussion over to you. As we all know, education has been frequently referred to as a powerful enabler and key factor in driving progress across all the 7 Sustainable Development Goals. In your opinion, Maryjacob, what concrete steps can education stakeholders take to effectively collaborate with other sectors toward achieving these goals? And tell us, how can we ensure that education is integrated and prioritized within across-sectorial partnerships? And any example of successful collaboration that you could share with us would really be highly appreciated. You can try to unmute Maryjacob.
All right, thank you. Okay, thank you very much. So I want to say thank you for the opportunity to be part of this meeting, and to be very sincere, I've watched practical results on how education have been able to be like a thread, right, that is connecting every other SDG. And for more education advocates and actions and campaigns and organizations and platforms and global support to be in place to support in bringing more SDGs together, we need to become more practical, right? So when you were telling the Ministry of Finance to put in more money in education, why should they put in more money when we are telling the tech minister that, you know what, yeah, the innovations are beautiful, but we need to streamline it through education? How do we say that? So it's time that we start being practical oriented. So when we are saying that we need every other part of the SDGs to get involved, I personally believe it, but how do I convince another person from another sector to understand and believe that education is the heart of it? And to do this, we need to become more practical with our engagements with these sectors. We need to understand that in the conversations about education, we don't make plans and involve these other sectors and say, you know what, let's come do this, but rather bring these other sectors together to say, we are building a transformative education system. And to do this, we need an education system that is going to show the beautiful innovations you're creating, an education system that will provide food system in the future, an education system that will sustain and bring a good climate for us, right? So if we are bringing conversations around education and we are involving every other sector to understand that bridging hunger, making health sector better, we need a transformed education system where our learners can do this. And some of the practical things I know very well about have been some of the global advocacy approaches through taxation that the ActionAid platform has been doing. So I know that ActionAid has involved in so much on taxation and has found ways to link it that we need to fund education, we need to finance education. To make education sustainable, let's find more ways, let's find finances. And then with the Global Partnership for Education, through the Raise Your Hand campaign, we saw different sectors, different SDG platforms raising their hands to education because conversations were open, and we were opening more avenues to have conversations and watch the fact that by raising your hand for education, you're raising your hand against hunger. By raising your hand for education, you're raising your hand against every other part of the SDGs that you so believe in. And with the Transform Education, with the on-guide Transform Education, we have also seen young people coming together in masses to talk about education as the heart of all of the things that are bothering to us. And I just believe we need to become more intentional rather as education advocates. We need to become more intentional, understanding that we want to make this world change. We want to make it better, and education is the key. And in order to convince every other person to see this, we have to have intentional conversation that are going to be intersectional enough that every other aspect and every other sector understands and sees it, that this thing called education is truly the key to unlock every other sector. Thank you.
Such a powerful contribution. Thanks so much, Maryjacob. It's really hard to
Thank you, Alice.
you such a fantastic speaker. And yeah, I think you raised some wonderful insights on making education practical. Being practical, really loved it, and involving all the stakeholders with thinking around the education that is relevant. And thanks for touching base on the Raise the Hand for Education campaign that bring in an aspect of finance. I completely agree with you. We can't really reach further if we're not financing, if we're not collaborating as all stakeholders involved into this cause. Now, coming back to you, Soledad, and as we consider this rapidly changing landscape of our global economy and a society, of course, it becomes increasingly clear that education must adapt to meet demands of a rapid evolving future. So in this slide, what steps can be taken to transform education system in a way that prioritize a creative and future-ready approach to learning? And how can we ensure that students are equipped with skills and knowledge necessary to thrive in this rapidly changing world?
Well, thank you very much again, Alice, and thank you very much as well, Maryjacob, for such important remarks and a summary of actually I wanted to also address regarding the work of UNESCO and especially the Transforming Education Summit that we addressed last year to gather the key stakeholders to think about how we can transform education and to make it more practical and to see how we can come up with a proposal that actually ensures this more agile way of working with all the overall parties that are involved, how we can gather not just governments, but also the key sectors, especially if we are talking about providing responses that are critical in the sense of providing training programs that are easy to reach and that are especially equitable and that are ensuring as well the role of technology in every sense. So first of all, I want to highlight that at UNESCO, especially after the very terrible disruption to education in pandemics, and knowing that 1.5 billion children and youth were affected by the COVID disruption, we thought about coming up with a very concrete proposal and in order to evolve on how to match the new global challenges, including the existential threat of global warming, conflict, proactive crisis, and the accelerated digital revolution. So we started to come up with key initiatives, especially around education. And one of these is, for example, the Global Education Coalition and the Global Skills Academy, which I am very proud to be coordinating here at the headquarters. And for example, to cite, our aim is to reach 10 million youth by 2029, equipping this young people and youth in priority countries with essential 21st century skills, and of course with a very important focus on the digital and how technology is somehow accelerating the overall labor market as well. And then regarding the UNESCO Transformation Summit, I think that very quickly, since we are quite shortened in time, I think that it's important to highlight that this meeting last year has gathered over 2,000 participants around the world to think about this response and to address the toughest bottlenecks to achieving SDG 4 and to see how we can inspire people to lead a global movement for education. So to summarize a bit and give the 5 proposed ways of transforming education as an outcome of this very, very important summit, I can say I can highlight 5 points. First of all, as it was raised also before, that inclusive, equitable, safe, and healthy schools are key for creating the right space to learn. Second, learning and skills for life, work, and sustainable development are fundamental to keep pace with the changing world. Third, teachers, teaching, and the teaching profession are essential also, as there is no substitute for a teacher, and we must keep education continuing. Fourth is the digital learning and transformation, as we have to make sure that technology has to become a key tool for education and for work. And in order to be future ready, we need to consider the role that especially artificial intelligence is beginning to play in education, and how the digital transformation, as well as we call it, is both benefiting but also impacting young people, and is very delicate and challenging aspects that must be considered, and we have to invite all the relevant stakeholders in order to advance as technology is evolving, of course. And finally, as also Maryjacob was highlighting, financing education is key, because we must address how to close the gap with strong policy and data. It is important to recall that reaching SDG 4's targets will require significantly increased financial resources. So as well as the overall analytics and the proposals that we are coming together, we really have to see how to allocate the necessary resources to do so as well. So just to finalize, I think that we, as UNESCO, and just to cite, we are running parallel strong initiatives among all these topics. And for example, as I mentioned before, some initiatives like the Global Skills Academy have realized how the role of the private sector is key in order to partner and see how we can propose together some faster solutions, and to see how we can address a practical response to countries around the world. Over to you. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Soledad. That was powerful. I really like the way you were thinking around equipping young people with the skills and the big ambitions that you have to reach young people by 2029, and then the training program. I feel like it's really important, I think, when you think of the future and where we're heading to with this new technology. So thinking of equipping young people with the 21st century skills is such an important thing to bring in the conversation. So thanks for raising that up. And yeah, as we near the end of this fireside chat, it was a short one, and we have a second one, so don't worry. As we end, we near the end of this chat, I would like to direct the final question of this chat to you, Maryjacob. So we currently find ourselves in the midst of a pivotal time period, roughly halfway between the Transforming Education Summit that took place last year and the upcoming SDG Summit this September. So given this context, I'm really curious to hear from you, Maryjacob, especially your thoughts on the progress made in terms of the youth mobilization and education since the Transforming Education Summit, and what you hope to see from this moment as we approach the SDG Summit. How can we ensure that the voices and perspective of us young people remain at the far front of the global conversation on education, and what concrete actions can we take to empower young people to drive positive change in their communities and beyond?
All right, thank you very much, Alice. Looking at the fact that more young people have gotten more involved, right? And more organizations are becoming more intentional, building the youth network and the youth power. I think more and more we have seen after the Transform Education Summit is the fact that more young people are becoming more partners and more involved in the conversation, as against foot soldiers and mobilizers in the past. So as much as we are known to mobilize, as much as we have the numbers, we have the energy, it is also time that we also start looking at the fact that beyond the energy and the numbers, beyond just having the age, we are also experts in particular things. And more than anybody, we understand what we want this education system to look like. More than any other person in the generations before and the generations we're looking at, we understand the roadmap to get to where we want to be, and of course, where our younger ones want to be. So in light of the looking forward to the coming events, and of course, from where we have come from, I think I am hoping that more organizations, more global leaders, and more global power would look at strengthening the youth power in their different nations, in their different organizations. It's happening already, but we could do more, right? And then I am looking also forward that during the events that we don't have the youth-led events and youth conversations being strictly on the side events, right? We want to be part of the men plenary conversations. We don't want to just be a young person sitting part of the table. We want to be part of the table. We want to have these conversations. And as young people, as young advocates, I am hoping that it's time to also keep engaging more young people. Let's keep building the mass. Let's keep building the energy, the capacity, so that even the child in the lowest of communities, in the communities where that are most accessible and the ones that are not very accessible, all of these young people are able to understand that we all have this one voice of transforming the education system into having a better future for ourselves, a future that we can be proud of. So I am hoping that we are all intentional about having young people as part of the conversation, and that also as young people are very intentional on having practical engagements to make it better for us and the future ahead.
That's brilliant. I'm really glad that you brought a part of bringing young people at the table. And yes, we have the energy activists and we do all sort of, but we need to be part of, those big moments, big panels, and having those conversations with those who make decisions. So thank you so much for bringing that in the conversation of today. And thank you both, Soledad and Maryjacob, for sharing this wonderful perspective with us today. Your insights have been extremely valuable and have enriched our discussion in a meaningful way. So stay tuned for the Q&A segments. As I said in the beginning, we really have after the second Thea chat, we're going to have a moment to engage more with the participants and encourage really the participants to put your questions in the chat box. Any question you might have for Maryjacob and now for Soledad as well, put the question in the chat box, and we'll have a moment after the second Thea chat to address those questions. So yeah, use the chat box as much as you can. Now, up next, as I told you, we have a fantastic lineup of stellar speakers, and I'm so honored to be joined by Jaïri from the Global Future of Work Manager for Unilever, and Cecilia Soriano, the Regional Policy and Advocacy Coordinator at Asia South Pacific Association for Basic and Adult Education, and Amy Parker, the Senior Learning through Play Advisor at Save the Children. So we are really looking forward to hearing your unique perspective on the role of education in promoting sustainable development and preparing youth for future of work. So in this second Thea chats, I really want to kick off this conversation with you, Jaïri, especially given the work that you're doing. What should the global education system do to prepare children and young people for the future of work?
Hi, everyone. Thank you so much for inviting me at this great spotlight session, and nice to meet you all wherever you are currently at the globe. It's a big question, obviously, and I'm definitely not a representative of the education system itself. I sort of represent a player in the private sector. I think looking at this question from the perspective of an employer, I think there's quite a lot of trends, as we all know, that have impacted our current work environment. So it's obviously the digital disruption, the likelihood of automation for both blue collar and white collar working processes, big skills gaps arising, and I think all were very much accelerated by the COVID-19 pandemic. Therefore, coming from that perspective and then matching that to what the global education systems could do to prepare young people for the future of work, I think it really resonates with what has been said previously by Soledad and Maryjacob. So I think there is there should be really a big focus on lifelong learning and really igniting lifelong learning and sort of having that mindset of lifelong learning. Yes, defining future fit skills, so soft skills, digital skills, professional skills, helping equip young people to adapt and thrive in this sort of rapidly changing environment, and to be able to sort of almost having the skill or learning the skill to be agile towards potential reskilling, even if that is needed. So there is yes, this focus on lifelong learning, but also on potentially sort of reskilling to be able to be agile to sort of what the changing work environment is requiring. And then I think lastly, very much focusing on, and that's something we at Unilever very much believe in, to encourage young people to choose purposeful and to choose purposeful career pathways. And I think in general, it's been stated really purposefully by you, Maryjacob, really this cross-sector collaboration. I think UNESCO, you are doing a great job with your Global Skills Academy as well, partnering with others to create those jobs and skills. So we try to do that, tend to do that both inside our organization as well as in our value chains, or even outside of our value chains is crucial. Therefore, and I'll leave it then, I'm happy to explain and give a bit more examples later on in the fire chat, but Unilever has committed to contribute to a fairer and more socially inclusive world. And we have also committed to help equip 10 million young people with essential skills to prepare them for the future of jobs and future job opportunities. And to also keep and find meaningful work. So I keep emphasizing that word as well. So purposeful and meaningful. So I think that also fits with that future fit skill set. I'll leave it there, but thanks. That's really how we see this could help and contribute to the global education systems.
Great, thank you so much, Jaïri. I think I really like the way you articulated clearly the purposeful learning and close collaboration. I mean, I believe is that my key takeaway is really, because sometimes you just do things for, just doing it, but then bringing in a purposeful, making purposeful choices for careers and looking at the new trends of education and where the world is heading to such a brilliant intervention. And just a quick reminder for speakers to the intervention, the fire chat is 2 minutes. Try to limit their interventions to 2 minutes. And yeah, we keep the conversation going. And thank you so much. Moving to you, Thea, can you share an example from the Asia or Pacific region of an initiative that is preparing young people for the future of work, or any lesson that could really be applied on a global scale? Would really be keen to hear in that other side of the world.
Thank you, Alice, and hello everyone, and greetings from Asia Pacific. And in particular, I'm currently in India. And I would like to say that ASBE has so many members working on skills and education for decent work, from Indonesia to India to Bangladesh. And I'm going to share one excellent program here in India. The Azad Foundation's Women on Wheels in India provides safe and reliable transport for women by women. And this is very non-traditional in the context of India. The program enables resource-poor young women to earn a livelihood with dignity by engaging them in non-traditional livelihood options. Azad trains young women to become professional chauffeurs. And through this work, Azad has provided skills, education, employment to more than 1,000 young women from marginalized communities. And these young women, in turn, have since 2008 provided more than 1.5 million safe rides in Delhi, Calcutta, Jaipur, in India. So this program provides valuable lessons that can be scaled up by the government. And one very important lesson from this experience is that mere skills education does not bring sustainable change. The young women need to be equipped with the knowledge to interpret their context while learning new skills and taking control of their lives. And this is what we refer to as gender just skills education, or GJSE. And based on this experience, governments and education systems across the world can take a systems approach. We know that governments have been initiating skills development, but there is a lack of system approach to enable young people to have opportunities to learn, upgrade, refresh skills, and as Jaïri was saying, to be more agile to the changing context of the world of work. And of course, we want decent work, and for them to pursue a life of dignity. So based on this experience, this ecosystem support requires: one, support for marginalized youth on basic education and transitioning from school or education spaces to work. And this includes making available easy to understand information about skilling opportunities, jobs, market options that can be accessed. Because we know that young people, sometimes they don't know what's out there. So it's very important to reach out to them. What are the learning and skills opportunity and employment and livelihoods opportunities? Secondly, I think we all know this, that we need to provide counseling support for young women and marginalized youth to negotiate with their families and to pursue a life of their choice and livelihood of their choice. And this might seem, very easy for some countries, but in the context of South Asia and even in Southeast Asia and in many parts of the world, young people are not able to negotiate their life choices and livelihoods choices. And thirdly, it is important, we see that it's important to substantially invest in contextual skills training and formalize a skills training curriculum that recognizes prior learning or prior experiences, going beyond the technical skills and including life skills linked to building physical, emotional, cognitive, teamwork, and also currently we also realize we need digital and business skills. So these are all very important skills needed for work and life. And lastly, from our experience, it's very important to ensure flexible learning schedules, especially for young people coming from marginalized communities, so that education can respond to the learners' needs and also guarantee learning environments that are free of sexual harassment, violence, discrimination, and stereotyping. So these are just some components of GJSC, as we call it, but of course, it's a very comprehensive framework that goes beyond the education sector. So over to you, Alice.
Thank you so much. I was really moved to hear some of those wonderful initiatives that really tackling the main topic of today, and also like to intervention on bringing in some counseling options for young women and contextualizing skills, life skills, and flexible learning for young people. So, I mean, that's what was really a fantastic intervention, and thanks for sharing that with us today. And now moving to you, Amy. Yes, we know that many innovative ways are being shared to allow children specifically and young people to learn better and be more equipped in the future. What are some of the ways you've seen that young people can be prepared? Over to you, Amy. Are you able to unmute?
Yes. Sorry, yes, I couldn't. Thank you so much. And what a platform to be speaking on. I feel both nervous and privileged to be here, and a little bit of a dinosaur, if I'm honest. But really appreciate the focus on this. I think what's really interesting is listening to all the conversations around this, I guess, this conflict between, or not conflict, or desire to shift the system. But let's be honest, the education system is incredibly slow to change. It's designed in all countries to reach as many people as possible, and so that agility is quite difficult to shift. And I think also interestingly, again, listening to conversations and my own experiences, that despite sort of all of our desires, academic skills are still privileged above and beyond sort of the more workplace skills and the sort of softer skills around life skills. And I think that's such an interesting thing for us to try to grapple with. I'm sure there are lots of historical and current reasons for that, but I think just something to mull over a little bit. And there is certainly some movement that we're doing within Save the Children in terms of trying to advocate for a more sort of breadth of skills within the system. So working with the Lego Foundation on looking at trying to encourage ministers of education and curricula to look at sort of more critical thinking, problem solving, creativity, and really privileging and incorporating those types of skills within curricula. But I think interestingly, sort of where I've seen some of the most interesting work is in sort of the more non-formal and informal spaces based either around sort of education or learning centres or within communities and homes. But I'm just going to talk about a couple, sort of a number of sort of different approaches that we've taken. I think one is sort of increasing access and pushing boundaries. So an example would be around in Jordan where we're working, these are with young adolescents. So I think as well, I know sort of the adolescent and youth age range sort of is vast, but I think also getting in early is really important. But working with sort of local community-based organisations who have their own centres, and then working with local tech companies to bring in sort of short courses, flexible short courses of 2.5 to 6 weeks, working with girls to look at robotics and coding skills. This is sort of pushing the boundaries in terms of that type of technology is not usually available in these communities, and also girls to be accessing these types of skills is highly sort of unusual. And so it's sort of looking at a way of demonstrating rather than just talking around how girls should have access to these types of technologies as well. I think also sort of I've seen some really interesting work around combining sort of catch-up education. So for those who've missed out or dropped out, alongside targeted vocational skills based on sort of community needs, or I guess sort of a little bit on the traditional skills side, but also trying to push the boundaries again, or we're looking at markets and seeing what is available. So literacy and numeracy combined, for example, with how to set up your own small business based around a skill that you either already have or want to learn. I think also looking at different delivery platforms. So obviously education is here and then the rest of the world is here. So I think looking at other spaces where young people are, so certainly in some of the areas in which we work, safe spaces are set up. An example would be in Sierra Leone, where we work with adolescents and young parents. And within that space, there's a variety of things on offer. Some of it is around information, around sexual reproductive health. Some of it is around positive parenting sessions. Some of it is catch up in terms of literacy and numeracy. And some of it is linking it up to other local skill providers. So again, sort of really looking at a holistic approach to what education means. And I think finally, promoting child and youth leadership is really key. Wonderful to see so many confident voices on here, and Maryjacob, I'm a big fan. But there's lots of other innovations around that I've seen, particularly ones around youth innovation labs, which again sort of are, I guess, sort of looking for sort of within a setting. It could be a refugee setting or a local community setting, but gathering young people and sort of supporting people to be able to identify existing problems, prioritising them, and then coming up with the solutions. And I think this is where organisations like Save the Children act as conveners and act as linkers ups, and potentially also sort of providing some of the basic skills, but really it's over to the young people to be able to lead the way in that one. I'm going to, my final point as well, and it comes again in terms of sort of bringing everybody together, is that obviously education and young people are there, but it's a whole ecosystem around them that is so important. Some of our biggest barriers are parents, our governments, are people who simply don't value either youth voice or a broader curriculum. So I think bringing people along with us is super important, and to Maryjacob's point in terms of linking up the dots, joining the dots is going to be really important. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Amy. That was perfect, a perfect intervention, especially touching base on the, I really like the idea of, introducing robotics and these new technologies to young people, catch up opportunities at vocational schools. I think these are really brilliant, and yeah, thanks for sharing all the wonderful work that you're doing with us. And as we are nearing the end, approaching the end of our fireside chat, I'd request to keep up the interventions 1 minute, because we have a lineup of so many questions. Yeah, young people put in the chat box, and really want them to hear your perspective or the answers from you. So that's why I really am keen to hear, as we wrap up, like the final round of 1 minute each. Starting from you, Jaïri, education access is unequal all over the world. How is maybe you've touched a little bit on this, but I would love to hear mainly how Unilever is working to address these inequalities, especially when it comes to gender. If you could bring in an aspect of gender within 1 minute as we wrap up, I would really much appreciate it.
Yeah, thanks. I can give some sort of pragmatic examples, because I noticed in the chat some people have been asking for it as well. Is that I think one of our more successful programs in South Africa is called Level Up. That's an employability program, and it's all virtual, but there's also some hybrid elements to it. But that really seems to work well. So we're working with Microsoft and Pearson and LinkedIn, and we're especially targeting girls and women. It's a one-stop shop where you could find both sort of jobs. So it's a job platform, and it's also about training and accredited training, volunteering experiences, and together with the partners, yeah, people are able to sort of have it's quite a low barrier to enter the platform. You just sign up, and then you have access through your phone or a computer. So that's quite purposeful. Then we also have an example of scholarships that we support, and entrepreneurship scholarships programs that we support in the US with one of our brands, Shea Moisture, where we particularly focus on Black women and Black girls in the US. And lastly, you might know the brand. We work with Dove, which is a soap brand from Unilever, and we built on the self-esteem of girls and body confidence globally, and we do that together with the World Association of Girls Guides and Girl Scouts, and that's been a very effective partnership as well. So there's quite a lot of programs where we specifically focus on gender inequalities.
Thank you so much, Jaïri. That's an interesting approach, especially part of bringing in the confidence part of things, and that was very perfect intervention. So coming back to you, T, as we finalize, as we reach the end of our fire chat, I would love to hear, given the numbers that we have, Asian and Pacific regions are home to a vast number of young people, what steps do you think need to be taken to ensure that education in this region are more equitable, if I could say that like that? Thank you. You muted.
Okay, thank you, Alice. And let me respond to that question by sharing the recommendations from youth-led action research that we have done, talking about the futures of the education we have done with young people in 2020 to 2021. And this was at the height of the pandemic. And these recommendations do not only talk about access to education, but more importantly on inclusion and relevance of education to young people. And you can see at my side is a recreated alphabet. So it says E for equality, D is for diversity, C is for compassion. A lot of times young people are talking about compassion in the education system. I is for inclusion, O is opportunity, and T is technology, and so on and so forth. So there's a lot here in this alphabet. But let me just say 3 very important recommendations that they said. One is leave no one behind in accessible technology. And they emphasize the deliberate actions needed towards making digital infrastructure accessible, free, and inclusive. And especially for youth with disabilities, they said that smart softwares and devices are needed to respond to the sensitive changing needs of youth with disabilities. So that's one very clear example. recommendation. And they also talk about stress-free education. So, like even if you're in the education system, many of young people and students, they would drop out because they are not being recognized. The environment is so stressful and that there is no quality learning happening. So they said that stress-free education will motivate students to continue learning and provide opportunities for young people irrespective of their marginalities. And thirdly is contextual learning. The young people express their hope for contextual learning now and in the future. Especially, they also said that education should recognize the capabilities, the diverse capabilities of students, not only based on grading examinations, and specifically this came from the young people from Nepal, and that education should be sensitive to the context and cultures that will allow for relevant learning and sustenance of local knowledge systems, so that this education will foster creativity, innovation, and also application in the larger society. And so lastly, when we talk of equitable education, young people said that education systems must move away from the path of commercialization and privatization and instead strive towards equitable, inclusive, and free public education. Because equitable education is also should also be made available not only for children and youth, but also for adults. So these are just a few of the recommendations in making education systems equitable for all. Thank you.
Thank you so much. See, that was amazing because I could relate to most of those recommendations, even though I'm not from the Asian region, but I could still relate to the recommendations, leaving no one behind, even the part of contextualizing, and even remember technology that could accommodate learners with disabilities. So I believe that that really stood out. And the stress part, I saw somebody raising that in the chat. I totally agree with learning shouldn't be stressful, it should be fun and more enjoyable. And wrapping up to you, Amy, as we wrap up our chat, moving to, of course, we're going to continue the conversation in the chat box. I would love to hear, as a former teacher yourself, what do you know is needed to make sure teachers are also equipped to support young people as they prepare for their future?
Yeah, it's $1 million question, hey? Yeah, I mean, not to repeat the fact that, that teachers are sort of beholden to the system, so they're often judged on the grades that their students get, and the fact that, again, sort of privileged is the sort of literacy, numeracy, the more academic side of things. And they're often finding themselves in a position where, they have to reach those targets, they have to deliver a curriculum. So the broader sort of life skills and vocational training and those sort of creative and negotiation skills that are so needed for sort of the future learning, they're just not part of our education system at the moment. So on them, and they're not measured and they're not counted. So I think really we need, there needs to be there is and there has been, there will continue to be advocacy to sort of shift that. But that is sort of part of the parcel at the moment. But I think investment in ongoing training and development. Teachers are a product of their own environment. Most teachers have gone through very traditional education systems themselves and only know that. So I think, different and blended ways of teacher training is super important, and lifelong training, really important. It can be big workshops, but it can also be WhatsApp groups. It can also be mentoring and coaching. There's loads of different really exciting sort of models of teacher training going on there. I think teachers need to be part of the solution, just as youth have to be. Teachers need to be at the table. They need to have their voices heard. They know what's going on the ground. They're away from the capital cities and they're away from the ivory towers. So they really need to be listened to and to be consulted. And then I think finally they need a little bit of empathy and a little bit of investment into their own well-being. Teaching is such a crucial job, but it's such a stressful job as well. And constantly having to deal with changing priorities, sort of in the policy environment, and then married up with what's happening in the classroom as well. There was a time during COVID where teachers were everybody's heroes, as most of the world had to homeschool their own children. Sadly, I think that's dying off now, and teachers are again sort of more the reasons for poor education rather than sort of being part of the solution. So yeah, just having to really prioritize value and be with teachers, I think, is a really important thing.
That was perfect, Emmy. I couldn't agree more with you, because myself, I have so many role models as my teacher who really pushed me to become who I am today. So I really believe they really need sort of support, being trainings, being recognizing their mental health and being at the table as well. Thanks for bringing a perspective of teachers. Mostly in these spaces, we'll be speaking of young people, children, vulnerable communities, but sometimes we forget very important stakeholders that are teachers who really do most of the work. So thank you so much for bringing that. So thank you, all of you. Thank you really for your invaluable contribution and an insightful perspective. I totally sure that your insights has provided us with a wealth of knowledge. We could really see from the chat box the questions young people and the people who joined today are asking, that I'm sure they're really going to benefit from what you shared, and even some of the next segment that is going to come. And then with that, we now transition to the final segment, and just remaining a few minutes, we're a little bit running out of time. That's why we might not go through all the questions, but we try our best and see how far we can be able to go. And yeah, of course, we'll be, as I said it in the beginning, we won't be able to, people won't be able to raise their hands and ask, but then we're going to address some of the questions we received so far from the chat box. And yeah, we'll be addressing some of the questions, yeah. And then perhaps addressing that from both first side chat and then the second one. From the first question is for Maryjacob Ozikuchu. Had a question and want to know, how can young people in this sector connect, network and advocate with other young persons from marginalized community? Of course, yeah, it links to another question Mustafa also had on how an under 18 who are activists and working on grassroots level can be equipped with skills and finance to run their organizations to the work of SDGs oriented. Maryjacob, if you can just go ahead and tackle this question, that would be amazing.
Okay, thank you. So most of the youth leaders that are working on global levels and joining conversations come from different platforms, right? And there's this saying from where I come from that no matter how far you go, you still have a root where you come from. So this is it. For every young person on this level, if you're joining this meeting, you're also part of this level that can make this change happen. And in going back to the communities where you come from, in going back to the community of interest, in going back to the networks, the connections that you work with, is going to help us have this message go further, because we may not be able to reach out every community, every network, every organization, every platform, but we can be able to reach individual young people. And if we keep spreading this news, we're going to keep reaching out to more people and getting to the root of where we want to go to. And for how to support under 18 young people, I know a whole lot of young networks are connecting with younger generation of people and younger generation of activists. It is easier for us as young people if we work together as a community than when it is when we're working as individuals. So even with this, within individuals that are under 18, there are going to be amazing networks, the different networks. There is a Transform Education Networks, the Activist Network, a lot you could see on the internet that are doing amazing stuff. And all we could do is just keep connecting and keep spreading until we make sure that our hands reach each other. So basically just keep connecting and being part of something bigger.
Thank you so much, Maryjacob. That was fantastic. And then moving to the second question, and I would definitely remind you to keep the question to 1 minute. It's already time. I would have loved to have this conversation like forever, but it's just rich conversation, wonderful, different and diverse insights. And let's move to you, Jaïri. Felipe had a question, and he's one of our innovator with initiative on foresight. Had a question. What if the future of work is no work? But not basically on the usual suspect technological or sociological trends. Or what if the is in absolute reconceptualizations of what is perceived as work, as their destructive reflections on the private sector, for example, Unilever, like your work. What about the future of work through, for maybe try to bring some insights around, the future of work and how you see these things coming together.
Sorry, I find it really a tough question to understand. So the question is, what if there's no work? And how should I relate that to the future of work? I find it hard to answer because obviously that's a very conceptual thinking, which is great, but maybe not to answer in like 10 seconds. But I think what we, at least within Unilever, try to do even beyond Unilever, as well as for our own employees, is to really make sure that everyone is focused on a future fit plan and prepares him or herself for the future of work, maybe in this very unlikely moment when there is no work. But I think there's always going to be some form of work where we need to either upskill ourselves in technological ways to be able to work alongside artificial intelligence, or there might be quite a lot of different skills needed alongside new forms of working. So to sort of prepare yourself with a future fit skill set, I think is something we aim for, but I find it hard to sort of answer in a very short amount of time. Yes, but it's a great question.
I think you tried bringing in an aspect that there will always be work, so that's quite an interesting aspect, and I completely agree with you. And moving to Thea, Christine had a question for you. What are your thoughts on building agility through multiple streams of income, where maybe a lawyer is also an innovative farmer? Like, try to bring in an aspect of multiple streams of income. Any of thoughts on building agility through multiple income streams?
Multiple income streams.
Yeah, an aspect. Any thoughts, especially trying to reference, maybe it could be an innovator and then still be a doctor, or trying to, any thoughts on agility and how you see this coming in, looking at how the future is.
Okay, so we've had discussions with young people, and also not only young people but with adults, on the futures of work and also on the futures of literacy. And many of the discussions is only goes beyond work as we describe it currently, like economics, so a lot of discussions on what would be the future responsibilities in the future, such as on how to do environment protection, how to deal with climate change, and all of that. And currently, this is not considered as work per se, because but they are work in the larger sense. So we also believe in ASBE that preparing children, young people and adults into this future is very important. This should be the agility and resilience of the people, and not only of the learners, but peoples in general will be better served by an education that looks into this very important contexts that are happening and unraveling amidst the different contexts in the world. So that is what we believe as, agility and resilience also should be included in education and education systems. And I've seen in the chat, for example, a lot of people are asking, how about climate change? How about all these contexts emerging? How about fragile contexts, security issues, and all of that? So we think these are very important issues, and content and also skills around this are very important that need to be addressed by education systems.
Thank you so much. That was really interesting. And now we've got just 7 minutes. No, now it's 6 minutes on this call, and we have 2 more questions for our remaining speakers. you definitely, I'll be asking you to wrap it up in 1 minute so that we can wrap up on time. And Amy, we have the last question for you from Amani. So was asking that besides quality education and gender balance aspect, is there any system of trauma healing or mental health in schools? I think you're muted. Yeah, muted.
Hi. Sorry, mixing up with my system. Sorry. So the question there was around: are there any other examples of supporting well-being? Oh, now you're muted, Alice. Oh, Alice, you're muted.
So sorry about that. I was saying that, yeah, beside the quality education, gender balance aspect, is there any system of trauma healing and mental health in schools?
So I mean, I think there are definitely examples of where mental health and psychosocial support interventions have been introduced. I think it's often either through teacher training and equipping sort of teachers with non-clinical. So I think it's really important to make sure that we don't ask teachers to do more than they are trained to do. So psychosocial first aid is often a key sort of package that we work with trainers on, teachers on, particularly in areas where there's lots of sort of either crises or sort of an impact of crises, and it essentially just equips teachers to be able to respond to sort of issues that they might see in their classroom. We know that children and young people sort of manifest sort of either traumatic experiences or difficulties that they're having through their behaviour, for example. So it helps sort of teachers to identify those, deal with them initially in terms of being able to speak to children, and then work out where sort of the different services are to be able to refer them to. And then I think there are also a number of different activities that can be done. And I was chatting in the chat around sort of the use of creative arts, for example, is a really nice approach that SAVE uses. Around either using drama or art, or poetry, to help children to be able to show how they're feeling without necessarily having to use the words, which are often very difficult to express. So yeah, I would say that there's a number of different ways that we can certainly share in terms of that.
Thank you so much, Amy. That was a perfect intervention. And the last question, we have 3 more minutes to go, and then I'll request Soledad to use 1 minute as taking the last question. As we know, last week at the Education Cannot Wait, the UN raised $826 million for education in high emergency countries. What mechanisms are there to ensure that the funds get to the marginalized communities, really, Soledad?
Oh, thank you very much. I'm not sure if my camera is working. Can you see me?
No, I can't see you, but I can hear you. Yeah.
All right. Sorry for that, and apologies for leaving before I was in back forward meeting. So so taking this question which I already shared in the chat, I think that there are many different mechanisms to ensure that the funds reach, of course, the priority marginalized communities, and they may vary depending on the specific programs and also the initiatives that are being funded. So perhaps some common mechanisms that I can that are used to ensure effective and transparent use will be a very rigorous monitoring and evaluation system. Of course, transparency and accountability are key. And of course, also, as we were mentioning at the beginning of the fireside session, we were saying that involving the key stakeholders, especially the local communities, the member states, of course, and the institutions and the overall actors is essential for the planning and implementation of the programs. Over to you.
Yeah, thank you so much, Soledad. That was a very happy ending. Yeah, concluding with such a fantastic, a fantastic approach of telling us that there is a way to monitor accountability and all those things, being those pledges that have been done, follow-up accountability. So thank you so much for bringing that into the conversation. So it's almost time, and thank you so much. I've loved being part of this conversation, speakers, and for this dynamic conversation, all the participants for being with us today. I saw the chat box, I saw the engagement. Thank you so much for being with us. As a final note, please remember that we still have more spotlight sessions coming in, so do follow us on social media and connect with different innovators. The post with most likes will be awarded the Mobilizer Award at the Big Pitch on the 28th next week, so help relay young people around these solutions, and then of course join us at the Big Pitch. It's really going to be a fun moment. On the 28th of February, you can scan the code or visit a Future Agenda website to learn more about how you can join the Big Pitch, and even how you could, especially if you're a young innovator, how you connect with other innovators and change makers into driving these solutions. And finally, to join any of our future spotlight sessions, we every day have a spotlight session. So we have from 9 a.m. till 10 past 10 a.m. Eastern time. So please do join the other future spotlight session and till the Big Pitch via the following link. And then tomorrow is going to be a fantastic session on preparing the future of work. I'm sure some of the people who asked some of the questions, you could definitely get more insights from tomorrow's spotlight session. So thank you so much, and bye.